Founders Night here at Plus 10 under the Founders Market app umbrella. Our speaker tonight is Emmett Carney. Emmett is co-founder of Jumble. Jumble is in the email encryption space. It's something that Cork is particularly strong on, and I think it fits into this concept of creating hubs where particular cities or towns have specialities, and I think so. Emmett is in the right space. Emmett has a great story to tell. It's truly global before it even starts, and we've tried to poach Emmett and Jumble from Dublin, and we hope that tonight is just one little piece of acclimatizing him to Cork. Okay, Emmett, do you want to?
Thank you very much, Fergus. Thanks, Philip, Antonio, for the opportunity to tell the Jumble story here tonight. Very much looking forward to it. So I'm going to share my screen here. Yeah. You got that, Antonio? It's not going to present mode. It's not going to present mode up on the screen. Okay. So thanks very much. My name's Emmett. I'm a co-founder with Jumble. And tonight I'm going to give you a run through of our story. I'm going to start off and give maybe a bit of background to email encryption, which our product is, and background to email encryption, how our product works from a practical perspective, but also then from a technical perspective. And then I'll share our business plan, how we intend to make money. And then we'll finish off a little bit on the Jumble story, who we are, where we've been, and where we're going to be in the coming months. So more and more businesses are required to protect their email data due to regulation. Companies like doctors, lawyers, dentists, particularly in the US. Many of the existing solutions are very cumbersome to use, time-consuming. Jumble provides one-click email encryption that works cross-platform, hence making it simple for the sender and the recipient to work cross-platform, which is unlike any other offerings out there in the marketplace at the moment. So we're going to start, I suppose, like any story, at the start or at the beginning. So we got a couple of words up here, a couple of letters on the screen. That actually represents the very first email that was ever sent back in 1971 by a gentleman called Ray Tomlinson. He sent communication from one PC to the next on the ARPANET network back in 1971. I suppose that's the forerunner, the start of email communication as we know it today. And obviously over the last number of years, it's morphed and changed and improved in many respects. But those couple of letters that make up the first row of your keyboard was essentially the very, very first email that was sent in 71. So like any form of communication, once you start sending information, there's like two cohorts of people. There's somebody who wants to protect information. There's also somebody who's always looking to dig in and steal your information. So quite quickly after the development of the first email, people started to develop technology around protecting that data. So the very first... Is that in presenter mode? The very first email encryption standard was called DES file encryption. It's basically symmetric key encryption. It essentially uses the same key to lock an email or lock a piece of data, and the same key to actually open it. This standard was developed in the early 70s, and by 1977 was formally notified by NIST, and ultimately the NSA got an NSA approval. It was came to prominence, but it was fraught with people question whether it's secure, whether it's not secure, because the NSA were involved. The key length was only 56-bit. Why? Because the NSA wanted to hack it and break into that actual code. So I suppose there's conversations that are happening now in the last couple of months in relation to NSA and backdoors. These started way back in the early 70s, and I suppose what we have today is just an extension of those same conversations. And that standard remained intact until the late 1990s, when it was actually broken by the EFF in about 22 hours, 15 minutes. But during the twilight years of the DES standard, AES started to come to prominence. AES 256-bit is another symmetric key encryption standard, and essentially it's more secure. It's obviously got a longer key length. And in terms of trying to break that particular standard, there's some huge numbers and stats there, but ultimately you're looking at, 3.31 by 10 to the 56 years, the length of time it would take to crack that particular standard. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because that's one of the encryption standards that Jumble actually uses to protect the email data. It's a very secure standard. It's an international standard, so we're not developing a new encryption standard. So AES was then recognized by NIST, ultimately the NSA, in 2001, and replaced the DES standard. So both of those standards are symmetric key encryption, which is the same key. Again, in the mid-1970s, RSA, three gentlemen came together. Their initials make up the RS and the A. In 1977, they developed what's called asymmetric key encryption, which essentially public and private key encryption that many people know today. You need a public key to encrypt a piece of data, then the secret private key is used to decrypt the information. So that was developed in about 1977, and okay, it's changed ever so slightly, but still remains as one of the forerunners in terms of email security. So we've been kind of jumping around different decades, but if we jump to 1991, it was a great year for many different reasons. And personally, a good favorite film of mine is Silence of the Lambs. Who can't forget Nirvana? Fantastic music. The technology of the day in 1991 was ahead of its time. You got smartphones there that you probably need a suitcase to carry around with yourself. But one of the most important developments from a tech perspective, and particularly an encryption perspective, happened in 1991 when that gentleman there, Phil Zimmermann, developed what we know today as PGP, or Pretty Good Privacy. And he essentially took the AES and the RSA standards and developed public key, Pretty Good Privacy. Now, back in 1991, there was not very much need for these types of standards, and Mr. Zimmermann spent much time on the run. He was considered a threat to national security by the NSA because he was trying to protect information that they wanted to get into and break. Again, the conversation of the NSA trying to surveil and get it to be involved in everybody's communication was still very much hot and heavy back in 1991. But back in 1991, unlike today, not very many people cared about it. And if we jump forward from the early 1990s to where we are today, we've got Google, Facebook, everything that we do, all the information is online. Every email that we send, Google see it. If you don't believe me, if you've ever installed a Streak extension into your browser, you can see every time Google reads your emails, you get a notification that every time that email is sent or opened up. All emails in Ireland are opened up in a building beside the GPO up in Dublin. And that's quite clearly visible using the Streak extension. So everybody says, oh yeah, Google's spying us. When you actually see them spying, it's actually quite surreal. Right? I find that quite an unusual moment myself. But Mark Zuckerberg said privacy is no longer a social norm, and he's right in many respects. How our parents viewed privacy is going to be very much different to how our kids will view privacy in the coming years. And what Jumble is doing, it's providing a platform, it's providing one tool that's allowing people to take back some control of their own personal information. So if you don't want Google and other people looking at your information, Jumble provides a solution that's flexible and gives people choice in terms of what they want to protect and what they don't want to protect. So privacy is very much a need, very much a right for individuals. But when we talk about businesses, it's actually a need. Security is a need. They need to protect their information. Why? Well, it costs them money. The global cyber crime trade is actually worth more than the global drugs trade now. There's crimes happening every single day of the week here. Many of them go unreported. There's 138 attacks happening in the US every week, costing about $12.7 million on average per attack. So cybercrime is a real issue for businesses. So, but then you combine that with regulation, businesses have no choice, particularly the doctors, the lawyers, the attorneys in the US, they need to protect their information. And globally this year, there's going to be over $77 billion spent on security infrastructure, people trying to defend their businesses against cyber attacks. And, you know, is this investment working? It is to a certain extent, but you know, think back to all the cyber attacks over the last couple of months in particular, and there's 3 here which are solely focused on emails in many respects. And we all saw it, all these Sony emails being spread all over the tabloid newspapers, all over different websites over the last couple of months, particularly in December. Not a very pleasant sight. The most powerful man in the world, the man who the NSA protects, he had his emails hacked earlier this year. So that kind of proves the point of how unsecure email data is, that Barack Obama's emails can actually be compromised. Well, why can't anybody else's be compromised? And something that wasn't too highly publicized last year, but DCB had over 20,000 of their emails compromised last year as well. So again, just proving the point that there's lots of money being invested in different solutions to protect email data, and it's still not working. And all that information was compromised at rest in systems. And there's lots of solutions out there, but very few are able to cater for in transit and at rest. And again, I'll talk about how that relates directly to Jumble in a few minutes. So what solutions do businesses or people have to protect their information at the moment? Many businesses use what we call SSL connection, HTTPS, and that, you know, that's great. That's fine. As I said, it's great. It's fine for email communication in transit. But think about your email. How long does your email spend in transit? You know, it's only a couple of seconds at most. How long does it spend in your inbox and your sent items? Up to a lifetime potentially. So again, that's one solution that protects it in transit. You've got enterprise solutions, and Fergus, you were mentioning about all the businesses in Cork. Lots of businesses in Cork, security companies, offer different types of enterprise solutions. They work quite well internally within organizations. They want to communicate well to each other. But as soon as they try and communicate external to the organization, there's a breakdown. Why? Because the recipient hasn't got an easy way to access that secure data unless they go to an external portal where they're maybe given a 30-minute tokenized window or something to go and access their information. But they cannot communicate back and forth in the way that normal email communication happens using these enterprise models. And then we've got PGP, which has been around since 1991. As I said, they're developed by Phil Zimmerman. And one of the big problems, and one of, I suppose, the issues with PGP is that it's very unusable. What happens is the person sending the email has to find the recipient's or the person's public key. And how would you do that without actually contacting them first? Sometimes people have this key on their Twitter handle, or they have it publicly posted on their websites. You know, there's different ways people can share it. I know a lot of different sites offer or say that people should have key sharing parties. Everybody gets together and shares their public key before you start actually communicating together. And that's, again, fine if there's a gang of people who know each other who want to communicate. But often not, if you're communicating to random people, that's not a viable solution. And I think from a business perspective, who are constantly communicating with people outside their own network, it's a solution that tends to break down simply because it's not workable. And then the world has changed, like I've said, from the time of Phil Zimmerman, and people are becoming more aware, more conscious. They want to protect their email information. You have the EFF come out this year saying that 2015 is going to be the year of email encryption. The problem is there's no mainstream solution that's come to the market yet that has been so workable and user-friendly that anybody can use it without having to understand the actual problem. And what does the problem look like? Well, there's Bob. Everybody knows Bob and Alice who are always trying to communicate back and forth. It's bloody frustrating. You try and send an email and it works fine with the people you know, but then when you try and communicate with the person you don't, how do you find the key? You end up looking up some key server somewhere, or trying to ring them, text them, actually send them an email that sends you back their public key, but it's a cumbersome process. It doesn't really work for wholesale mainstream email communication. So what we're saying is Jumble offers one-click end-to-end email encryption. We currently have the product developed on Gmail as an extension, so it integrates with your existing Gmail account and it works within your browser. We've also got an iOS mail client app, so it's separate to your mail client that's on your iPhone at the moment. And we're currently developing Outlook, Office 365, Android, Outlook.com, and obviously across IE and Firefox at the moment. Yesterday, actually, we just had our first live demo of our Outlook product. So in about 3 weeks, we'll have our first live version of it. We can start rolling out with some beta customers. And Office 365 is more or less complete. We're going through some final stages of testing. Why we've developed across platform? Well, simply because users demand that they can communicate securely across platforms without having to worry about what the person they're sending the email to, what system are they using, oh, well, they're not using Firefox, whatever the case happens to be. Jumble has to work across all systems, which no other product on the marketplace at the moment currently does. And that's why none of the other products are actually usable. Jumble takes away that pain. So what does Jumble actually look like? So when you go to the Jumble website, one of the first things you have to do is you have to register. We've tried to make this as simple as possible because we're not interested in gathering lots of information, lots of data on people. So all it is your email address, password, confirm password, and then there's a captcha phrase then that you have to put in just to make sure you're not a bot or some erroneous person, that you're actually a real person. And what's actually happening here, and this is the behind the scenes part, when you register, the Jumble database, which is actually stored in Germany, is generating a public and a private key for your email account, okay? And what we do then is you send an activation email. So you have to activate that link. And when you activate it, your private key is then encrypted with your password. So Jumble never sees your password. We've no access to the actual user's password or to the user's key because it's encrypted with your password, and then it's also salted as well. What does Jumble look like? So if you look at what Jumble looks like currently on Gmail, I mentioned one-click email encryption. Beside your send button, you get the send encrypted button pops up. So essentially, you're given choice. When you're emailing, we'll say your partner saying going to be late home from work for 5 minutes, you don't particularly want to encrypt that. But if you're sending your boss a financial report, you may want to send them that encrypted. So Jumble offers choice, which is very important for businesses in particular. And then how does it look in your browser? On the top right-hand side, you can see what the extension. And if you click in it, you can see your public and private key, if you so wish. And once you install, you've registered, you install the plugin that you download from the Google Chrome store, and then you log into that extension for the very first time. And once you're logged in, you're always logged in. So the point being, you can send and receive encrypted email information without having to do anything extra special. So if I'm a recipient and I receive an encrypted email for the very first time, you'll get an email that looks something like this. And you have then you're directed to one option here, which is to click on this link. So you receive Jumble, you know what to do. You click on the link and it takes you to our website. You have to register because the decryption is based on your email account. You have to prove ownership of that email account before you can decrypt it. So there's a step in the very first time you actually access an encrypted email. And then you have two options. One is you can decrypt the email on the website. You just copy the email over, hit decrypt, and it decrypts online. But if you're on Gmail and you want to install the extension, you can download the extension, and then the second, third, all the subsequent emails just work back and forth, no problems, seamless communication. For businesses, we've built in extra business features. So that, we've talked about the basic send, receive of encrypted information, and that also includes attachments, by the way. But we've built in extra business features that business can use to help manage their data. And this one we call key management. I suppose people think about the rise of BYOD. Now you've got lots of employees going to work with personal mobile phones, tablets, and they're downloading emails onto those particular handsets. What happens if that employee leaves? they're potentially taking away work information that's now stored on a personal device. And unless the company has a signed BYOD policy, it can be quite difficult to actually take control of that information back. With Jumble, you can lock or revoke the keys, which essentially means that you're re-encrypting the information on the user's handset when they leave. So you're giving control back to the business over the work information on a personal device. And most importantly, you're not breaking or in contravention of any privacy laws by having to remote into that device, which the company doesn't own and it needs to request permission to do so. So they're able to do this remotely from the admin's office back in whatever office it happens to be. We got user management, which is in some respects similar to the lock and revoke for the handset, but it's based more on the actual user. So you can assign different rights to the users within the organization. And again, you can lock or revoke their keys temporarily if you so wish. So picture an employee leaves an organization, but then it comes back 2 years later, and they may want to access some of the old information. You now have a way of deactivating that particular profile on your system, then reactivating it if the employee happens to join your company again in a year or 2 years' time down the line. We've built in a feature called Content Sense, and I suppose the best way of explaining this is if anybody uses Gmail at the moment and you say, "Dear Bob, please find attached document," you hit send, but you have an attached document, you get a pop-up saying, "Are you sure you want to send this? You haven't attached your document." Content Sense works quite similar. Organizations can pick particular keywords that are sensitive to their organization, like finance and reports, and every time one of their admins types in an email has those words in it, they'll be driven to actually encrypt the information, so they won't be given the opportunities to just send unencrypted. And then we got a dashboard. I mentioned at the start, our target customers, a lot of people work in regulation. They have to prove that they're in compliance with different laws, different data protection laws, different regulations. And currently they do that through a very manual process by having to go back into emails and look for emails that contain certain keywords that they didn't encrypt. With Jumble, you can actually develop a user dashboard, which is very intuitive and allows them to manage their data protection, not just for compliance regulation, but also to make sure that they're actually protecting their own information. So that's the product in a nutshell. So who are our customers and where are they? Globally, there's over 1 billion business email accounts in the world. Many of them already require some form of email encryption solution. There's regulated entities, and we're currently targeting the 1.3 million attorneys in the US. There's companies that need to comply with data protection law. And then there's the security aware companies that are investing in their infrastructure based on the recent cyber attacks. And there's the email encryption market. Technavio have recently reported that it's currently worth, or it will be worth, over $2 billion by 2019, and it's grown at a rate of 20% on an annual basis. So how are we going to make money? Essentially, it's a SaaS product. We've got subscription forms of $3 and $5 per month, depending on which business features the customers actually require. To send and receive information for personal users is free. The product is offered a monthly subscription form and with the option of billing yearly in advance. What that does is creates reoccurring revenue, which is very interesting for our potential investors. And then it's obviously a SaaS model. And how we're going to go to market, we're currently engaged in some direct selling with large corporates, government agencies. We're leveraging support through reseller channels, so we're engaging with all the security resellers in Ireland at the moment. But how we're really going to realize our SaaS model is through inbound marketing and conversion of those leads using highly effective landing pages on our website ultimately. So what's different about Jumble and many of the other products on the marketplace? And it's quite simple, two things. First of all, we've got our API that creates and distributes the keys. And that distribution of the keys is crucial because that's the missing step of many of the other products in the marketplace. And then our extension that integrates with all the existing platforms, that's used to secure the actual email data. Again, a separate piece of software which is different to what's in the marketplace. We've got IP associated with how that technology actually works. So then just to recap on the encryption algorithms that we're actually using, Jumble uses international standard encryption algorithms, 256-bit symmetric AES keys. That's actually used to encrypt the body of the email. And then those keys are encrypted with asymmetric 2046-bit keys that that are generated on the server side, and the AES ones are actually generated on the client side. So ultimately, it's end-to-end encryption, and there's no chance for your ISP in the middle to read it. It protects against compromises in transit, but also at rest within your email account as well. How do you trust us? At the moment, we've got what we call our 3 lines of defense. Our key database, which is located in Germany, and we've located there from a data protection perspective. They've got the strongest data protection laws. That's encrypted using AES encryption. I've already mentioned your private key, which is what you use to decrypt your information. We don't have access to that. That's encrypted using the user's password. So it's nothing to do with Jumble. We never see that. And then we never see your actual emails. We don't store email data. We're managing keys, not managing the actual emails. And if you look at a lot of products in the marketplace at the moment, they're actually managing your emails and they're managing the keys. So it's like putting the key and the lock in the same place and hoping you don't get broken into, essentially, because you're giving the keys and the lock to the criminals straight away. And we're also investing in external penetration testing. So ultimately, you won't necessarily have to trust us. You'll have to trust the people that are auditing our systems, our code base, and everything to make sure that we are in compliance with what we're saying we're doing. And the upshot from all this, essentially, is that Alice and Bob, who struggle to secure their email data, can now do so very securely and ultimately live happily ever after. And I was just actually going to say a bit about the team and journey, sorry.
Go on.
But who's behind Jumble, essentially, in the startup Jumble? Where we are at the moment, we're still in beta. We're looking to launch in July this year. There's 3 founder members of the team. Gavin, who's over on the left, we consider him our hacker. He's ultimately our lead visionary. He developed Jumble himself out of a genuine need to secure his email data. He's a bit of a cynic in terms of people watching his information, looking at his emails. He has a background in security forensics, security consultant with Bank of Ireland, and he developed this, starting off himself. Why can people look at my email data? I want to protect it, and the existing solutions he thought were too cumbersome, so he wanted to develop a way to do it easy for himself. Fiona came on board, and we say she brings the adult supervision. She's a director from KPMG, a lot of strong financial acumen there, and I suppose in terms of going to the market, looking for investment, being able to produce numbers, and then also being able to manage a business in terms of the financial, what goes in must come out, blah, blah, blah. Fiona does an extremely good job. And I'm on board as a hustler in terms of trying to sell our product, get customers, generate some business. So Jumble is developed about 12 months. I'm on board since December. Fiona joined in July last year. And in that period, we're currently on the Startup Chile program. So how we got to Startup Chile and how we developed our product. I'll just take a step back to July, actually. Gavin said, right, when you develop this product, Gavin's been part of different startups previously. Actually, where we met Antonio, first of all, was in the Rubicon with a different product called Greengraph, which failed miserably, simply because we ran out of money. And I say it was mainly Gavin. He went through all his cash developing this product. And really, it was actually a very good product. It was a photo share and website stroke app. And he rang me up one day and he goes, I think I got a bit of stiff competition in the marketplace. This is about December 2011. I said, oh yeah, some small company called Instagram are doing exactly what I'm doing. I said, oh, that's quite interesting. Who are this company? What are the Instagram? And we all know what happened to Instagram over the coming months. But I suppose one of the focuses was we ran out of money. So to develop Jumble, and again, you look and say, well, we're bootstrapping this company. How are we going to make it work? Gavin actually moved to Asia for about 4 months last year. Why Asia? Because you can live for very cheap over there. Had a nice bit of a good time living in different beaches, nice holidays. But ultimately, the focus was developing Jumble to come back to Ireland to have a minimal viable product that we could actually start using. So Gavin came back in about November last year, just time for the Web Summit. The product was developed so we could actually use it and roll out into beta. Similar then, at the same time, applications were in for Startup Chile. So Gavin and Fiona are currently over in Chile, in Santiago at the moment. They'll be there until August, and then hopefully come back to Ireland. Cork, Dublin, whatever the case happens to be, Fergus. And then we've applied for a few other different programs. So we're in Startup Next up in Dublin in Google at the moment. And we've just recently been awarded HPSU Start from Enterprise Ireland. Spent last week with EI, and we're going over to Silicon Valley with them next month on the 15th of June. We're going over, there's 18 companies going over Enterprise Ireland, essentially to try and get exposure over in the Valley and meet potential investors, potential customers, whatever the case happens to be. So we've actually got 3 other developers on the team as well. So I mentioned Outlook and Office 365 in the development. We've had to leverage support, and I think Fergus said at the start, it's truly a global company. We've been leveraging support where we can and hiring people. So at one stage we had people working from literally all over the world, from Ghana for a little while, doing a little bit of work on our website, and now we got people working from UK, from Chile, from Dublin as well. So we're using Hangouts here. We use Hangouts on a daily basis for communication. So it's truly a global company, but the focus is very much to regroup in the back of startups really back here in Ireland. And over the next 12 months, we're going to develop out our technical roadmap. And with the work we're doing in terms of seeking more investment, take the product to the next stage, and we're hoping the next 12 months will be very exciting for Jumble. So that's more or less our story in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Emmett. Very insightful. Anyone want to ask a question or Philip?
Yeah, so talking about how you guys have already got a bit of investments, I just wanted to ask, like, what advice would you have for anyone who's also like maybe now starting to approach that stage of really having to look for a bit of investment to keep not only just your company running, but the guys in your team,
Yeah, well, if you're looking to go after angel investment, which is obviously the starting point outside of, winning competitions or going on different accelerator programs, which I think you should always be doing as well, is get out and meet people as much as possible. Networking, there's lots of great events, even in Cork. There's different organizations, whether it's Cork Big, and start talking to these angel investors and even at the early stage, even if you feel you're too early yourselves, talk to them, let them know about your product, let them know what's coming down the line, and start building relationships. Because ultimately, what they will invest in is you more than your actual product. I mean, there's a phrase about how a great team can make a weak product, but a weak team can't make a great product. Like ultimately, they'll be investing in you. So get talking to them as much as possible. And when you're talking to them, understand from them what they need. You should be asking questions. Well, if you're going to invest, what do you want from me? What are the milestones? What do we need to have developed? Because different investors will have different thoughts that depend on their appetite risk. And some will say just have a couple hundred base users, whether it's users or customers, but that's really drive those conversations, and don't be afraid to ask them what do they want. Because you don't want to walk away from you go for a coffee with some of these folks and you walk away going, yeah, we had a great cup of coffee and we just need to, what do we need to do? You need to understand what they want. But what we found what investor ready really means, and we were a bit thrown at the start, and investor ready, and you look at some of the investments that happen in the US versus what happens in Ireland. Like one of our competitors has raised over 10 million in funding before they went and started generating revenue. We go, wow, we got here back in Ireland, but no, it's a different ball game. Understand what they want, and being investor ready means having a product that people are willing to pay for, and that you can prove that you're actually able to generate traction and that you're able to generate customers. But I'd say get talking to people as much as possible, find your way into those networks, and then once you're in those networks, start trying to build that relationship and understand what they want from you to take it to the point of investment.
You've obviously, I mean, it's a very simple solution to a complex enough problem, and it's obviously light years ahead of what has been the standard for encryption up to now. So you've obviously moved the goalposts. I mean, how quickly will your competitors respond, or can they respond? I mean, have you got patents, have you got IP that's protectable, or is it just first to market advantage?
Yeah, well, first to market advantage doesn't always work, but you look at the offerings that are out there at the moment, and there's hundreds of email encryption solutions, all claim to do different things, and then they're focused on different types of customers, from privacy advocates right up to enterprise solutions. And there's actually only one other in the hundreds that even comes close to developing a product that goes cross-platform, that is one click, and that offers business features. And if you look at, can our competition do it? Any of the, we say, Microsoft Outlook has a version of email encryption. Gmail will soon have a version of email encryption. All these solutions work well, like I said, when you're communicating within a system, when it's Gmail to Gmail and Outlook to Outlook. The problem breaks down is when you start interchanging across different accounts and different platforms. And enterprise solutions don't and can't do it quite easily because they make the money by selling these products. And the small to medium enterprises and the personages don't invest in enterprise solutions. So our product is aimed at the small to medium in the initial period of time, and there's no other solution in the marketplace that's able to do it the way we do it. And in terms of IP, and there is an IP associated with it, but it depends on your view of IP, and you have to invest a lot of money to get your patent in the first place. And while that's expensive, the real money comes if somebody actually takes your IP and you put in a challenge to that. Say you want to fight with Google up in High Court for 12 months. Realistically, that's not a viable option, and not for us. We've invested our time, energy, and money in developing our product and getting it to market, but making sure that it's what the customers want and that the user experience is exceptional.
Antonio, any thoughts or?
How do you see regulation in terms of where regulation is going in terms of data protection? There's some debate about the U.S. government asking Microsoft to handle the emails that are stored in Dublin. So what are your thoughts on that? Now, let's say if somebody is using your solution, so what type of guarantees can you provide to your customers?
What we provide to our customers is that you have end-to-end encryption, which means that if you look at the case you mentioned, Microsoft and the US government, Microsoft, because they manage the transmission of the email data, their servers actually have a copy of all the emails, right? If you use a solution like Jumble, it's encrypted in your browser. When it goes to the ISP, they can't see it because it's encrypted. They see ciphertext, and then it goes to the recipient. So when you use a solution like Jumble, that person in the middle, whether it's Microsoft or anybody else, even if they hand the email over to the US government, the US government can do absolutely nothing with it. And the standards that we're using, like I've already shown the length of time it takes to break them. And if you look at what the NSA says breakable and it's not breakable, the algorithms that we're using are in the non-breakable side of it. So whether they hand them over or not is a case for them. But if you use Jumble, the US government or the ISP still can't read it. But in terms of where data protection is going, the US is heavily regulated, with HIPAA, different types of regulations for different industry sets, and it's all about trying to protect your data. Ireland, and Europe is changing over the next 18 months. Now, it's still debatable what that's really going to look like, but Darren Murphy, the Minister for Data Protection, was talking quite recently, and he was talking about that anybody who handles more than, 500 sets of personal data per week in their business. So no matter what, whether it's payments, whatever the case happens to be, you'll have to employ a DPO, a data protection officer. So there's going to be more focus on data protection in Ireland and Europe in the coming 18 months that people don't even realize that's coming down the lines right now. That's going to be more investment for businesses, that they're going to have to employ extra people to manage data. And one upshot from it, and like we're working with data protection specialists in terms of what the market is changing in Europe, the landscape is changing, and we're positioning ourselves to have a product that fits with regulation requirements. Now, again, until it's signed, sealed, delivered, we don't know what exactly the regulation is going to look like, but we're positioning ourselves to be the best place that we possibly can be for it.
How are you funding yourselves at the moment? I mean, there's obviously, from Gavin took a real risk taking off to the Far East and
Well,
working.
Well, he did, and I suppose if you look at, and you go back, his previous startup was say Greengraft. You're living in Dublin. He was living in Dublin, self-financing for a number of months. It's an expensive place to live in Ireland when you're paying for your own mortgage, you're paying for your own beers, you're paying for everything else here in Ireland. It gets pretty expensive when you don't have that check coming in every week or month or fortnight, whatever the case happens to be. So we were a little bit smarter this time and developed the product external to Ireland where you can live quite modestly. But right now, the three of us collectively have funded Jumble to get to this point, plus whatever supports we've gotten through Startup Chile in particular, because by availing that particular program, there is a nominal investment that comes from that particular program. But we're currently looking for more investment as we speak. But again, back to the question of being investor ready, we've listened to what people have been telling us, angel investors, different people we've been meeting for months now, and we understand what they want, and we're delivering on that. So we're in a pretty good position for it now.
So, how many, can you disclose how many customers you have now?
We're seeing, and I suppose depending on how we've our digital marketing campaigns, which is going to drive inbound marketing, we're seeing an uplift every week in our website views of, the last number was about 20% week on week, and our users, outside of what we see in from forums like this and in Ireland, about 50% of our users are coming directly from the US. And we've got companies that we wouldn't, something we wouldn't expect, whether it's small credit unions, dental practices, all coming from the US. But our traction is taking up about 20% week on week.
Something that I was paying, you are basically a group of three.
Well, there's six, sorry, and there's six in total. And I've only shown the three founders up there, but there's
So what is the role of the other three?
Development. So we've got one gentleman who's working exclusively on development of our Outlook extension in C#. We have another guy who's JavaScript or PHP who's working on a lot of the front end and a bit of a touch with Gavin. Gavin's obviously heavily involved in it, and then we have testing is a big part of what we do. And obviously, look at how our database is going to work right now. It's simple enough because it's Gmail, but as we go across more platforms, there's more chances for bugs that could really damage what we're doing. So we're testing at a test level to make sure that when our product is fully developed, that it's as bug free as possible. So we've actually got a person running full time in developing QA plans, so that's what our programmers and developers are working from, so that we make sure our product is as stable as possible.
Sometimes I look to European startups and I see someone with the title of CEO, CMO, all sorts of titles, and we realize, oh, this is just a small startup, and then we realize that for the product that they are developing, we have a lot of people in these type of roles, and they are not part of the development at all. So, and then when I was looking to you guys, three as the core team and three developers, I was quite curious to know, because it's a challenge to work like this with such a small team, but I think it's also an advantage. What type of advice can you give in terms of the dimension of the company, especially when you are in initial phase to grow, and you can't just go and hire someone that is just doing marketing, PR. You need to work with the resources that you have. What are your thoughts on that?
That's no matter how good your idea is, it's about the people that you bring around the table to make it work. And when we sat back a couple of months ago, looking how this was going to work out, we were quite clear in the roles that we'd all play to make sure we're all bringing value. That one person wasn't just making cups of tea every day, and that was the case. But advice to startups is, in some respects, keep as small as possible for as long as you can. Like Mark Zuckerberg said that recently, that his success was keeping it small as long as could, and he said he's happy to say he's kept his team to only 10,000. So it's keeping your teams as small as possible in the short term, but making sure that the people you have, that they're bought in, that they're working whatever it takes to get it done. I mean, we work using agile methodology, And obviously, we say Fiona and myself aren't from the technical perspective, but we're all fully committed to each other. We meet, we talk every day. We talk, like we use Slack, Trello, Hangouts, all different tools for workflow. And then we set weekly objectives. And at the moment, every Tuesday we meet and we got deliverables in terms of what we have to commit to each other. And the thing about bringing a startup together is the people you bring on that table, they have to be on the same page and they have to bring different skill sets where possible. Because when we look at, we'd say Greengraph, we'd load the technical side, but we didn't have enough sales and marketing. We didn't have the focus on finance. So with Jumble, we've tried to learn from previous mistakes and made sure we brought in the right people to deliver on it. But everybody has to be bought in and everybody has to be pushing 110% going forward. There's nothing like, oh, I want to do a day today, you know, I'm not going to go at it hard today. Every day, every hour, every week, you're working hard at it. Like, and that's it.
One other question on a general kind of startup side of things. If you'd, and I'm asking you this because I know that your earlier experiences getting funds and many agencies, you were running into closed doors a little bit. I think possibly that's why the guys ended up in Chile.
Yeah.
If Michael Noonan was here, or you know, someone who could change things, what would be the magic bullet that Ireland Inc., Cork Inc., are that, you know, we can push for and say, look, if Ireland had this, if Cork had this,
Yeah.
it'd be a better place.
Well, just one reason why we're in Chile, and I think what Chile have done is actually a fantastic program. They offer funding to take zero equity, and it's all about, they're trying to generate a tech buzz in Santiago. Now, Ireland's different because we've got the Web Summit, we've got activities up in Dublin, we've got IT at Cork, we've got activities happening in Cork as well. So there is a buzz already in Ireland. But any startups that we talk to, the hardest part is getting your foot on some form of a ladder starting off. And I suppose the difficult part is there's, at the moment, I'm sure there's thousands, if not hundreds of startups starting up with different ideas. And we found at the start, it's so hard to finance yourself in terms of, it's so hard to finance yourself in terms of day-to-day living, day-to-day expenses. And if you look at, you know, if you go and look at any of the tax schemes, if you go and look at, like typical example, if you tax schemes, you have to be in the startup 12 months before you can claim back your, you know, your previous tax. It's kind of like you need the money now, not in 12 months' time. If you talk to, I was talking to a friend recently, wants to do a startup, and he's on social welfare. They're saying, yeah, do it in 12 months because you need to be 12 months unemployed before you can do anything. It's kind of like, hold on a second, like if they change the goalposts a little bit in those early days, because I think once you get started, there's a number of resources that people can tap into, and we've done it a little bit different. Like when we had our MVP, people go, "Oh, did you go into where? Did you do NDRC?" Like, no, we went to Asia, you know. But that's what worked for us, and it's getting to a point of once you're set up to a certain extent, there's lots of resources, but it's getting that first foot on the ladder, and then in the absence of having your family, your friend, your food, or somebody to give you your money, one of the 3 Fs, it can be difficult. But I think that it can be maybe a little bit more done in terms of looking at the current structure of schemes, whether it's you're claiming back your tax, you're back to work through whatever different forms. Well, most of them require that you're out of work or that you're in your startup 12 months. And well, why 12 months? Like, what's that got to do? Because you need your money now, like, to get going.
And there are others, EI and Leo schemes where you if you're 2 years going, if you're 25 months in operation, then you're 1 month too old to be funded or to be supported.
And I suppose and that comes back to, and you know, maybe just down to the research that certain founders put in. But again, one of the first things that people may do is they go, I'm going to set up a company, invest a lot of time setting up this, you know, go to CRO and register the company, And then they realize, well, it's actually 6 months before they're developing their product. The next thing, they get to 2 year point before they realize it. And then it's all based on when your company was actually registered. And so, you know, it's maybe down to a little bit more research maybe in the early days as well. But in terms of resources, it's also about knowing when to interact with AI and how to interact with them, whether you go to Leo's first. And, you know, so I think if you're doing a startup, talk to people who've done it before, because we made some fundamental mistakes at the start, and we probably should have spoken to more people at the start. Talk to as many people and take whatever nuggets of wisdom you can from them.
You brought it back, I suppose, in a sense, to plus 10 a little bit. And I've always in the view that, as you said, it's the first step.
Exactly.
If what we'd like to do here is that you have free space, you know, so that you have a place to come and work. And
I think what Plus 10 offers, that's very important. You can come somewhere and work. But as a startup as well, by the name of it, startup, you're probably taking your first step out into the startup scene, and there's extra resources that you need. There's more people you need to meet, and it's in a place like Plus 10 that you actually meet more people, and it's about developing those relationships. But by having that, you know, free desk or free space that you can come into and work, it creates a whole lot more than just a desk, if you want. It's, you know, they're great.
So this is the culture that you can have in a co-working space. It's important for the process of developing stuff.
Oh, I think 110%. I mean, if you have, you know, if the person is in a co-working space like this, they're probably at home in their spare bedroom trying to develop or trying to create something. And if you're doing a startup for the very first time, what you don't know is scary. So it's about getting out and it's talking to people, and even, you know, sitting here having a cup of tea with somebody, and then you get to meet more resources. I need a designer today. I need somebody who knows a little bit of Android. I need this, I need that. You don't get that sitting at home. And then the step is, you know, there are co-working spaces which are, you know, ridiculously expensive and prohibitive then for a startup in the true sense, who is literally stepping outside his front door. And so many seem to get squashed at that particular stage. But I think what Plus 10 can bring, yes, the desk space is great, but it's the community and it's everything around that brings it together, that really makes it, you know, that's the secret sauce, really.
I wasn't asking a question in order to plug or push it, but just I suppose my own validation. We're doing something right.
No, I think it's great.
And just to finish, if anyone else has another question, just now, Coach. I mean, you guys have you have made enough progress, obviously, to be sort of investable and to get close now to getting closer now to your launch date and everything. And from your lessons that you've learned during this, I don't know how long you guys have been around, but we all know people say, to be a successful startup, you need a team and you need to work hard. But is there anything else maybe that we don't know that's just really hiding and something that people normally never ever told you?
To be honest, it's only just back to the basics. I mean, yes, you need to have a good idea, a good product, but it's a good team that works together with different skills. Like, somebody has to be shit hot at developing. Somebody has to be great at selling. Somebody has to be great at talking to the investors. And sometimes it's just selling that story to see the deal. But most importantly, it's about talking to customers. I think a fundamental flaw that many startups make is they have solved the biggest problem in the world, and ultimately it's for themselves. You know, they haven't gone out and spoken or talked to enough customers to really validate it. So, and that's the benefit of having the team. Yes, we can focus on development, but someone needs to be out talking to customers and doing customer development. And one big learning that we had was we went out talking to customers, and we ended up giving them our pitch deck. Hey, this is our product. So what do you think? Oh, great. Love it. Buy 10 of them. No, they all thought it was fantastic. And then we realized we're doing this wrong. We're doing it completely in reverse. So we had to go back and do a lot of learning and understanding about how to do proper custom meetings. And there's lots of research out there by, I think, Steve Banks and different people. So I think outside of your team, having a product, investable, it's about, you can't lose focus on the people that you're ultimately looking to sell to. It's all about the customer. and making sure you put them to the forefront.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And we hope to have a new guest next week. Philip, who's joining us next week?
So next week we have a learn your lesson. He's actually one of. Oh yeah, these are the founders. These are the founders.
He's running out the door.
Yeah, so these guys are actually the two guys behind Learn Your Lesson. I had a look at it myself with the guys last week. It's very exciting. It's very well developed as well. Looks really good. For a first platform. So, but I'm not going to ruin it. Obviously, I'll let the guys
Reveal.
Yeah, I'll let them reveal.
Okay, so see you all again next week.
Yeah.
And just one thing before we do finish up, like I said, we're still in beta. We're looking to launch in July. So if anybody wants to use the product, we're welcoming all feedback at the moment, good, bad, or indifferent. So if you want to check it out, let us know what you like, what you don't like. We very much appreciate that at the moment.
Jumble.com.
Jumble.io. Jumble.io.